Okay, I'm really hoping that you watched the Khan Academy podcast. Since I'm going to go fast, I need to get to Turner and the slave ship. I've mentioned the Romanticism exhibited less fascination with the classical world and all its philosophy, and more interest in the medieval world and its religion and mysticism. When the medieval complex that had housed Parliament burned down in 1834, leaving behind only the medieval Westminster Hall, the British government held a contest to design a replacement. Their stipulation: the design had to be based on either Elizabethan or Gothic architectural styles. Either style would have been perceived as a return to the good old days when true craftsmanship prevailed, before industrial ready-made mass-produced goods flooded the market. Charles Barry and A.W.N. Pugin won the contest to design a replacement for the Houses of Parliament. Pugin, by the way, was a devout convert to Catholicism, one reason why he loved Gothic architecture, which was associated with an age before the Reformation split the church. Another interesting detail that your reading left out is the Gothic revival was associated with a conservative Victorian reaction against liberalism, which many in Britain thought had ignited the bloody revolution in France and the subsequent Napoleonic Wars. The term for 19th century buildings that imitated 12th century Gothic cathedral architecture is Gothic Revival. Again, this style reflected a nostalgia for the beauty, craftsmanship, and spiritual certainties of an earlier age. Gothic Revival was very popular in the United States as well. St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City is a famous example. Many of you have probably seen it. But the new Houses of Parliament simply cannot be classified only as Gothic Revival. There were many neoclassical elements to the design, reflecting the influence of Barry, who loved the neoclassical. If you leave out the tracery and the spiral towers, this really could be a Renaissance palace. Note in particular its rhythmic symmetry. The Houses of Parliament also included some very modern features for the time, including towers that were really designed to ventilate the building, not just to soar toward the heavens, and metalwork in the roofs to reduce the risk of fire. Here is the one important portion of the Palace of Westminster that survived the 1834 fire, the Hall of Westminster, built by the son of William the Conqueror in 1097. Westminster was the primary residence of the kings of England until a fire destroyed much of the complex in 1512. After that, it served as the home of Parliament, which had been meeting there since the 13th century. It also served as the seat of the Royal Courts of Justice. Let's watch a brief introductory video made by the UK Parliament. This is one of your required images, but I'm guessing it's included mostly to showcase how Barry and Pugin used Westminster Hall as a model for Parliament's interior. And here we see the old and new compare. The 19th century central lobby is the heart of the Houses of Parliament. It's the place where the corridors from the Lords, the Commons, and Westminster Hall all come together. The College Board image doesn't really capture the ceiling of this room, which is quite different. So let's watch a very brief clip, also from the UK Parliament. Finally we come to my favorite romantic painter, maybe my number 2 artist crush after Caravaggio. Like paintings we've seen by Géricault and Delacroix, this painting captured a dramatic current event. Any guess what the event was? It's the burning of the Houses of Parliament, painted pretty much right after it happened. Turner was actually an eyewitness to the fire, and he based his painting on sketches that he made as he watched the buildings burn. I've juxtaposed this painting with our required work. Imagine that this is an attribution essay question. Why is burning of the Houses of Parliament clearly a work by Turner? Well, in both paintings we see the play of light on water, inspired partly by the repeated trips the artist made to Venice, the city of light on water. We also see the human figures crowded into the foreground, overwhelmed by the forces of nature and disaster, that is, overwhelmed by the sublime. Those fierce, saturated yellows juxtaposed with blue are also characteristic of Turner's work. I'll talk more about his color theories in a moment. But these bursts, critics said blobs, of pure color were something new, a foretaste of the art that would burst upon Europe in another 40 years with the Impressionists. We'll linger, I hope, on the slave ship. Next to the raft of the Medusa, this work generated the most past AP questions from this unit, and this work is still on the list, so heads up. Let's get a little background on Turner first. Turner achieved great early success as a landscape painter, rather in the tradition of Constable. But Turner's vision of the British countryside was less sentimental than Constable's. His work also foreshadowed developments that would not re-emerge until later in the 19th century, with realists such as Courbet. The painting captured the poverty that gripped the English countryside in the very hard early years of the Industrial Revolution. Here, likewise, is a painting that suggests Turner's fascination with horror, another form of the sublime, right? Like Goya, Turner painted his nightmares, in this case, probably enhanced by the opium he took to treat a lingering and painful illness. Turner's Field of Waterloo, that's the site of England's greatest triumph over Napoleon, the final battle of the Napoleonic Wars, also looks more like a work by Goya than by a British romantic. It conveys not so much a great victory as profound carnage and loss. The painting, by the way, was deeply unpopular at the time. Critics considered it unpatriotic. I've mentioned Goethe, probably the most important romantic literary figure. Goethe also had a color theory. The plus colors of yellow and red yellow excite lively feelings, while blues impart gloomy and melancholic emotions, or the impression of cold, as Goethe put it. To Goethe, whose writings Turner closely studied, yellow was above all associated with the sun and its energy-giving qualities. Goethe also anticipated color theorists by observing that, quote, every decided color does a certain violence to the eye and forces it to its opposition. In more plain English, complementary colors catch our eyes and combine optically. Note that in this painting, Turner makes considerable use of complementary colors, especially yellow and indigo. He also strategically places small dots of colors so that the additive mixture would gain brilliance, a technique that we saw in Vermeer's paintings and that we will see again with the Impressionists and even more the Post-Impressionists. Turner even imbued the Industrial Revolution with a harsh, austere beauty, as Monet would a generation later in one of our required works, which I've stuck on the slide as a teaser. In the Turner painting, we see the locomotive barreling toward us, pumping steam into the air. Like the wild animals of other romantic paintings, it conveys power, dynamism, as well as a certain amount of menace and brute force. Any guess who painted the work on the bottom right? That's another Valley of Mexico painting by Velasco, this one from 1879. Is the railroad almost an element of nature? Is it an invader of nature? Is it maybe both? Note that Turner uses color much more radically, even though his painting dates from 35 years earlier. Oh, if you skipped the Khan Academy video on this work, please go back and unskip it. Pretty please? Here is Simon Schama's account of this painting from the Power of Art series that I like so much. It's a long clip, sorry, but Schama does a better job than I'm going to do presenting the history behind this painting, its composition and use of color, and its romantic elements. When the disembodied voice returns, we will be leaving Romanticism behind and exploring realist paintings and a more radically realist new art medium, photography.